do intelligent people sometimes make relationship decisions that they later regret? Why do young people who are smart, capable, ambitious, and full of potential sometimes lose direction because of a relationship? Is it immaturity? Is it peer pressure? Or is it something deeper happening beneath the surface? Welcome to the Rooted in Freedom podcast. And today, we are focusing on pre-deciding relationships, and I'm joined by my guest who will introduce himself.
Douglas Angogo. I'm a born-again believer. I am married for the last 13 years to one wife, Jambi Mushogi, and we have 3 amazing daughters. I'm also a relationship coach. I'm also a youth and teens mentor, an author, and also run a program for young adults in campus that is called Get It Right, Make It Right. It's a program that we take them through 7 weeks preparation for them to be able to get into meaningful relationship that honors God, leads to marriage. And our core theme for that program in campus is called Relate Well, Be Well, and Stay Married. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Douglas. You're doing a wonderful job getting our young people grounded and starting on the right footing. And that's why we have you for today's segment on the importance of relationships and how people can really start well and predefine what they want long before they enter into those relationships. So in our first episode, we explored a difficult but important question. Is your child truly ready for freedom? We talked about how university doesn't simply test intelligence, it reveals character, values, discipline, and identity. And perhaps the biggest insight from that conversation was that freedom doesn't create who you are. Freedom reveals who you are. Today, we are taking that conversation one step further, because if there's one area where freedom, identity, and decision-making collide, it's in relationships. And here's the question I want every parent and student to think about. Why do intelligent people sometimes make relationship decisions that they later regret? Why do young people who are smart, capable, ambitious, and full of potential sometimes lose direction because of a relationship? Is it immaturity? Is it peer pressure? Or is it something deeper happening beneath the surface? Today, we are going to unpack that. And that's why I'm joined by my guest, Douglas Agongo, who will be unpacking that for us a little bit more. And now we are going to get started. Douglas, please explain to us what are some of the common relationship patterns that have been observed among students from a practical and non-judgmental perspective.
Right. Thank you, Esther, for such a very vibrant platform for helping young people and just supporting the family institution in terms of marriage to be able to help young people make predetermined decisions. I love the topic of today that talks about making predetermined decisions or pre-decisions. What do I need to do before I get a relationship? If even I go to your question, in terms of answering your question, I want to really just quote around 2 people. One is called Steve Waters. Steve Waters says, people who marry well aren't lacking love. They're intentional in their path. And then he says, too many Christians are lazy in love, expecting God to make up and make a decision for them. Steve says, people who really marry well, they're not lacking love, but the people who are intentional in terms of the path they want to take. Another person I want to quote is a friend of mine. It's called Boniface Nyoike. And he says, wisdom tells us that when we fail to spend time preparing, we'll inevitably have to spend more time repairing. And then one of the things that he mentioned there when we had a session with the campus student said, your fulfillment in life heavily depends on the influence by the relationship you choose to get in. They say that even the quality and the fulfillment in life depends on the quality of the relationship that really propagate or initiate. And then it says that relationships are not accidental. They are not accidental. They are a product of wisdom, intentionality, and foresights. And I think that is where your answer lies in terms of what are the underlying issues that are causing relationship go in a wrong way in terms of campus. And one of the major thing is what I said, preparation. And that comes in terms of not really preparing or having predetermined decisions before you venture into a dating and courtship relationship, or in terms of getting into romantic relationship. The key word there is lack of preparation or lack of preparedness that leads to what you call painful endings. Because if you don't prepare well, like Boniface says, and have to take a lot of time in repairing, which is not the best thing to do. So that's what I can say is one of the major things that is causing a bit of challenging in terms of dating and courtship and relationship in campus is because of lack of preparedness. But I thank God because of this session that talks about how do we prepare or how do we make decisions before you get into a dating relationship.
Thank you, Douglas. And you've touched on two very important things: preparation, you say, which is very important, and also intentionality. That even after you prepare, when you get into that relationship, then you have to be very intentional about it. Okay. And that takes us to the next question. What is it about the university season of life that suddenly makes relationship feel so important?
I think in the transition season, it's how life has been wired in terms of how we grow from one stage to another. And in that stage, in terms of psychology, we know when someone gets adolescent, they get to now young adults. And then the space that you get yourself in terms of the space means I can quote in quote, the place that you find yourself in after every stage of life will probably put a demand on you in terms of what next after that. And that's why when they transit from high school, they get into campus, and that place places a demand on them to really quote unquote fit in or probably explore the other stage or the other part of their life that they want to get in. But now the challenge, like you said, is there's that pressure not to really figure out what you want to do, but get into it first, then now start figuring why am I in this thing. So the challenge is we, like you said, it's not like campus is a haven of dead relationships. But I've seen guys go to campus and get out of that place with really functional relationship and they get into marriage and they thrive in their marriage. But like you said, it's a place where there's that curiosity and that bit of desire to see how does life looks like in terms of now me. I'm not in high school. I'm not being under any control, and I'm free to make my own choices. And one of the choices I want to try to make is the choice of getting a relationship. Now, the funny thing is, like I said, we're getting into it and ask ourselves, why am I in this relationship? Like I mentioned before, it's because of lack of preparation and intentionality. Yes, there's that curiosity, that a desire to really get into that space of the next stage of my life, which is not bad. But now we are doing it out of exploring, but not out of probably planning. So I can say the challenge we have is we don't really intentionally ask ourselves, why do I want to get into it? But we get into it and then ask ourselves, why am I into this relationship? So it's a campus, a good place for growth, exploring in terms of how our life is changing from one stage to another. But now there must be also to call boundaries. And I can say defined relationships of what I want to do and why I want to get in this maybe a relationship with this person.
Okay, thank you, Douglas, for explaining that to us and talking about that most times we are getting into the relationship and trying to find out, okay, why am I even here in the first place, which is the wrong way to start. And some of us are just going through it because we found ourselves in campus. Really, that stage in life, you're starting to think about relationships because your peers are doing it. You find yourself, oh, okay, even me, I need to get into a relationship, and you're there exploring. So it's not something we've thought of a little bit more. We're just going probably with the flow of things.
Yeah, in fact, like if I can quote a friend of mine, David Ogata, Reverend David Ogata, he said we had a session with him on dating last week, and he mentioned a few things that we need to understand because I need to define why I'm getting in this relationship because that will be able to help me to know who I am getting into this relationship with and then how I'm going to relate. And then he mentioned that we must understand that, I think he mentioned really that we must choose our choice and love our choice. And then he said, when you start dating, you must understand that you need to discern, then you must decide, and then dedicate. Now, the challenge you're mentioning in terms of what happened in campus is because most of us, we don't discern, but we decide, and then we dedicate, and then you come back to discern. So we have really relationship going wrong in campus because young people are not really asking themselves, why am I getting this? Because the why will determine the who, and the who will determine the how I'm going to get into this relationship and date my, or maybe to my relationship. And then that will also be able to ask you a few things because before I ask myself why, then I'll be able to ask myself the question about, is it the will of God? And that's why the place of Egota said, I must discern first as a young person. Why am I in this? Is it the will of God? Is it the right time? Have I really sought God into this maybe next stage of my life? Have I really asked God? Have I really been able to be in the place of God? But now, young people in campus, and I want to really say this is the worst we do is we don't discern. So we decide to get relationship, and then we dedicate this issue in terms of now committing it to it, and then you come back and say, like I said, oh, why am I in this? So it's start discerning. So you're doing a reverse psychology thing, which doesn't work, because at the end of it is you get heartbroken, because the moment you move from now this dedicating to deciding, then you want to discern, then now you're moving on from probably a heartbreak or getting out of an issue that you knew wasn't meant for you. That creates what we call now the challenge that we see in campus. You get into wrong relationships, get heartbroken, and the worst of it is you find yourself now regretting because you chose to dedicate and decide without discerning. So that should be one of the things young people should decide in campus, that before I even start dating, I need to discern. Discerning means I need to see God, seek God. I must have the will of God in what I'm going to do. Even the Bible said that commit your ways to the Lord, He'll make them successful. So for us, we don't want to commit. We want to commit to God. We want to commit to them, then we commit to God. It should be the other way around. Commit to God first, then now commit this person to God. I think that's what I can just emphasize more on the part of where is the challenge in campus.
Okay, that's very interesting. And it's also powerful when you put it in that order of discerning, deciding, and dedicating. And that most times what is happening, we are getting the order wrong. We are starting from this middle, going to the end, and then coming back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's where then challenges start coming in.